Welcome to the Storytelling That Sticks for Business and Life podcast. I'm your Keynote, TED Talk, and story coach, Doug Stevenson. In this podcast series, I'm going to share with you some simple and practical storytelling techniques and hacks that will make you stand out from the competition so that you can get paid to speak, or to give a TED Talk that goes viral, or to simply tell your story in a way that makes a difference in the world. You'll learn how to choose, craft, and deliver stories that stick. Personal stories from your amazing life, business stories, leadership and sales stories, stories that are marketable and memorable, stories that sell you and your product or service. My job as your virtual keynote and story coach is to help you design and deliver stories and speeches that get people to do what you want them to do, or to consider a new perspective. If you're serious about using storytelling to advance your career, to get paid to speak, or simply to get your message across in a more engaging and compelling manner, this podcast is for you. All right, well, let's get started. This podcast episode of Storytelling That Sticks for Business and Life is going to be different from all of my previous episodes because this is not about a story that you tell to an audience. It's about the stories you tell to yourself, about yourself. Because all of the stories that you and I choose to share with an audience are based on the stories we tell ourselves about the things that happened in our past, how we interpret the pivotal moments and relationships that shaped us. Now, as I record this podcast, I'm 73 years old. And that means that more of my life is behind me than in front of me. At least I hope that's true, because I don't want to live to be 140. I'm not even sure I want to live to be 90. When's the last time you saw a happy, healthy, and vibrant 90-year-old man? I can't think of one. 90-year-old women? Well, now that's another story. But I'm a guy, and I know what I'm in for. But be that as it may, I often find myself, and I wonder if this is true for you, I often find myself wandering backwards into moments and memories from my long, distant past, to all of those magical and meaningful moments, the highs and the lows of your teens and 20s and 30s when you were trying to figure things out. You were making mistakes, right? Taking chances, falling in and out of love and getting your heart broken, learning how to make money, right? Pay the rent, finish college, get a job, get married, have kids, get divorced, change jobs and careers. Life with all of its ups and downs. And far too often, when my mind drifts back, far too often, I find myself dwelling on the stuff that makes me sad and embarrassed. And it makes me cringe. And when that happens, I end up feeling bad about myself. So I need a way to shift away from the bad memories to the good memories, because there were plenty of both, right? Are you with me? Now, I was talking to Deborah, my lovely wife, about this, and she told me about this concept called negativity bias. Negativity bias is the tendency to pay more attention to negative information than positive information, negative experiences rather than positive experiences. It's this weird thing. Now, another way of saying it is that we feel the sting of negative memories and experiences more powerfully than the happy and joyous experiences. We tend to focus on the hurt and not the happy. So the research on negativity bias tells us that as humans, we tend to remember traumatic experiences more vividly than positive ones, that we recall insults better than praise, and we respond more strongly to negative events than to equally positive ones. Can you relate to that? Do you ever find yourself recalling something that happened in your past that stings many years later? Now, I sure do. Now, for me, here's an example of what I'm talking about. For me, my 20s were truly magical because I was living the dream in California. I'd moved from Chicago to Los Angeles, and I ended up living in Venice, California, a couple of blocks from the ocean. It was totally new. Instead of the concrete of Chicago, all of a sudden I was surrounded by palm trees. Now, you know from my past episodes that my reason for being in LA was to make it as an actor. Now, this was back in the early 70s. Everything was new. I was listening to Jackson Browne and Joni Mitchell albums. And all the while, I was trying to figure out who I was and how I wanted to present myself. And I remember being so happy, so elated, just so much new stuff, but at the same time, so confused. I was confident and sure of myself and insecure all at the same time. And boy, oh boy, did I screw things up and make a mess of things over and over again. And when I reflect back on those years, I have a choice on what to focus on. The mistakes and failures or the joys and successes, because, oh my gosh, there were plenty of both. So this episode is about what you choose to focus on from your past in order to make peace with yourself in the present. It's the story of your life. Now, they say you can't change your past, right? And that's true. We all know that's true. And I think you know what I'm talking about because your past, like mine and everybody else's, is filled with highs and lows as well. And I'm pretty sure in your quietest moments of contemplation, perhaps when you're having a bad day or a rough time, you may cringe like I do at some of the stupid things you said or did, the bad choices you made, the people you hurt and the ones who hurt you. And you can focus on that stuff, the bad stuff, and end up feeling crummy and sick to your stomach, or you can shift your focus and look at the same moments, the same events, the same relationships, and choose to remember the good stuff, the love and the joy and the successes. So the phrase that pays for this episode is shift your focus. Shift your focus from negative to positive. That is how we make peace with our past. Now, here's an example of what I mean. My first roommate in Los Angeles was this long-haired hippie dude named Darwin. He was a school teacher, an elementary school teacher, and he looked like a blonde Jesus. He introduced me to Chinese philosophy, Hindu philosophy, Buddhism, yoga, and meditation. And he also introduced me to my first acid trip. This was way back in the 70s, remind you, which under his supervision was a beautiful spiritual adventure. And he introduced me to Dan and Nancy, who lived up in Topanga Canyon in a funky house at the end of a dirt road where we'd smoke pot and play guitar and listen to Fairport Convention records. Now, Dan and Nancy introduced me to the writings of Carl Jung. Oh my gosh, it was such an exquisite time in my life. My mind was expanding into all these new ideas and philosophies and ways of thinking. It was mind-blowing, really. So one part of my life was hanging out with these spiritual, philosophical people who are opening my mind to all these new ways of thinking. And at the same time, the other part of my life was making my first forays into the acting business, taking acting classes and doing plays. And for many years, I was living in both worlds. And I was really struggling because nothing seemed to work Hollywood-wise, movie and TV-wise. But then after many, many, many years of trying everything I could think of, I got cast as Puck in Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. And it was the best acting I had ever done. And as a result, I won a Los Angeles Drama Critics Award for the role, which was huge. The Los Angeles Drama Critics saw my performance and gave me an award for Best Actor, which was huge, proving to me and everyone else that I was, in fact, a really, really good actor. And right after that, I was chosen to be the lead singer in a heavy metal rock band. It was an amazing time in my life. And when I choose to focus on those moments, I feel good about myself. On one level, I was kicking some serious ass, doing some wonderful creative work, having the time of my life. But on the other level, I wasn't getting hired to act in movies and TV. I was failing to make it. And I can't tell you how many times I've said to someone that I failed as an actor. I failed because I didn't become a movie star. Are you kidding me? Do you know how many people go to Hollywood and never become a movie star? I was just one of gazillions. You see, I didn't get cast in a TV series. I didn't get to play a big role in a movie. So which was it? Huh? Which was it? I was an artistic success. I won an acting award, or I was a failure. Good actor or bad actor. How about you? Can you relate to a time in your life where on one hand you were doing great, but another part of your life was not working? It was a painful mess. When you look back on that time in your life, in your 20s or your 30s, what do you focus on? The highs or the lows? No, I'm not suggesting that you don't take responsibility for your mistakes and failures. Not at all. You have to be able to own it all. You got to own it all, guys. You got to own it all, the good and the bad. Yes, you messed up. Yes, you made some bad choices. But hey, you were doing the best you could at the time. Am I right? But there is more to you than your mistakes and failures. In order to make peace with your past, you have to be willing to look back with honesty and compassion for yourself, to accept what happened as fact. Okay, those things happened. Those are facts. And then to move forward by shifting your focus to the positives so that there's some balance. Because the good always outweighs the bad if you choose to focus on it. Now, by the time I moved off into my early 30s, I've been in LA for 8 years with not much to show for it acting career-wise. It was depressingly clear that I wasn't making it as a professional actor, but I was making a really good living with my first solo entrepreneurial endeavor, my own carpentry and remodeling business. Rather than being a waiter like everyone else I knew, I'd learned a craft. And I was doing really, really well. And when I have the clarity of mind to objectively look back at what I did accomplish, it occurs to me that by building and growing a successful carpentry and remodeling business, I learned the marketing and sales and customer service skills that I've used going forward in my real estate career, where I had my own real estate brokerage. I had my own real estate company, Sherlock's Homes. And in my wildly successful international speaking business, those skills that I learned in LA with my carpentry and remodeling business were foundational to all of my successes in business going forward. So what should I choose to focus on when I look back? The stuff that worked or the stuff that didn't work? What do you choose to focus on when you look back? The highs or the lows? The loving friendships that sustained you through the hard times or the people that hurt you and betrayed you? It's all there for the choosing, isn't it? It all comes down to what you choose to focus on so that you can make peace with your past. Now, even now, when my mind sneaks its way back to a bad moment and I feel that cringe, that pit in my stomach, I shift my focus as quickly as I can to something lovely, something positive, a success, a moment of joy. Like when I was on stage in my skimpy little costume playing Puck, I was mesmerizing in that role. It was truly magical. I can see those moments on stage even now. And they fill me with good feelings about myself, and they wipe away the bad times. They don't erase them. They don't erase them. They replace them. Just long enough for me to move forward, back to solid ground, so that I can make peace with my past. Now, I escaped Hollywood and Los Angeles after 13 amazing and painful years and began again in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And after a decade as a successful realtor, I found my way, really kind of stumbled my way interprofessional speaking, and the cycle of successes and failures began all over again. I had great success as a keynote speaker. I got hired a lot all over the world, 18 countries. But I also had to hear the words, "We've decided to go in another direction," more times than I can remember. Oh my gosh. We've decided to go in another direction. Ugh, I hated hearing that. I had some really amazing successes on stage, delivering my keynote, standing ovations and all that kind of stuff. But there were some real clunkers as well. Some events where I walked away feeling terrible. Some audiences loved me and some didn't. And when I started teaching storytelling in business, when I shifted my focus from change keynotes to storytelling, some clients liked me so much, they hired me over and over again. Amgen, Deloitte, US Bank, Kellogg, TD Industries, HCA Healthcare. So return business told me that they liked what I was doing, that I was successful. But there were other clients that saw the same programs in another room in another time and were disappointed. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. When you put yourself out there, really out there, and you reach high and you really go for it, sometimes you're going to soar above the earth and feel the exhilaration of a job well done. And sometimes you're going to feel like a chump. It's called life. And in my experience, it's more like a roller coaster than a walk on the beach. So, all right, let's do a little inventory here. Depending on how old you are, you either have decades to look back through, or maybe you only have 10 or 20 years to look back over. Regardless, you have a past and it's filled with moments, memories, good and bad, joyous and painful, relationships that worked and ones that didn't, jobs that were great and jobs that sucked. And I know that for some of you, the painful moments go all the way back to your childhood. Stuff that happened in your home with your mom and dad and siblings, with your relatives and your upbringing, at school, good and bad teachers. There can be a lot of shrapnel back there, lingering hurts and wounds that are hard to shake. I know that I've got some conflicting emotions about my upbringing, and I've had to do some serious work, some therapy, to come to grips with some of that stuff. But there was good mixed in with the bad. There was love mixed in with the dysfunction, right? You got to find the good. You got to seek it out. You got to find the love, or else you just get stuck reliving the same old hurts and grudges, and they mess up your life in the present. We've got to make peace with the past. So go ahead and pick a painful or embarrassing moment. Go ahead, just sit with it for a minute. How does it make you feel? Pretty crummy, right? Now, shift your focus. Look at the same time in your life and find something lovely, something good, something that worked out well, or someone that loved and supported you. Now, how do you feel? Better? Good. My life really turned around in Colorado Springs. I got married to my soulmate, Deborah, at the age of 44. We wrote our own ceremony and held it in our backyard. It was her second marriage, but for me, getting married was a moment that I never thought I would get to experience. I'd never had a successful relationship. And there was a time when I thought I never would have a successful relationship. I'd given up. I just thought that I was too broken. But when I got down on one knee and asked Deborah to marry me, and she said, "Yes, I will marry you, Douglas," And the following June, we were standing there under a chuppah that my friend Michael had built in my backyard, saying our vows in front of friends and family. I broke down in such an overwhelming release of tears and emotion. It was such a primal release that all of the sadness and pain and loss from failing to make it in Hollywood, all of the heartbreak from all of my failed attempts at romance, all of it was healed in that moment. Because I'd been auditioning for roles since I was 19 years old. Chicago, in Los Angeles, as a carpenter, as a realtor, as a speaker. And I won some and I lost some. But the role that I really wanted most, that I'd never realized until that moment, was the role of husband. I'd always wanted to be married. I always wanted to be someone's husband. And along with that, lo and behold, came the role of stepfather. I got to be a stepfather to Michael and Bennett. What a great bonus. Here's the deal. You and I have a lot of work to do to sustain a level of peace and joy and wellness in our lives. What we choose to focus on will either springboard us forward into a positive frame of mind, into peace and tranquility and wellness, or they'll drag us down into feelings of low self-esteem, low self-worth. That causes us to stagnate. Stagnate if you must, but not for long, okay? Don't get stuck for long. Shift your focus. Focus on the joy and the love and the good times. Make peace with your past. All right, well, that's it for this episode. If you feel that you learned something valuable today, something that you can use that will make your stories stick, stories that make you and your business memorable, marketable, and monetizable, there are 3 things I'd like you to do. First, click on the follow or subscribe button and leave a review wherever you listen. And second, share this podcast with your friends and coworkers, your email list, and on social media. And third, connect with me on LinkedIn. And when you're ready to get serious about taking your stories to the next level, or if you have an important speech, presentation, or TED Talk coming up, or if you want some guidance on how to make the transition to becoming a professional speaker, let's schedule your free 30-minute coaching session where we can get to know each other and see if we're a good fit. And as always, I'd love to hear from you with your questions and comments. Let me know that you're out there listening and learning. You can send an email with your questions, comments, and suggestions to Deborah@DougStevenson.com. That's Deborah, DEBORAH, @DougStevenson.com. Hey, thanks for listening. Until the next episode, I'm Doug Stevenson.